I'm your host, Brandon Smith, and the entire purpose of this show is one singular thing, that is to help you live a life that much more free from dysfunction. So our topic today, we're going to talk about employee engagement and what exactly is that and how you can do a better job of that. So if you're sitting here today, either as a manager or supervisor, and you're saying, hey, I want to get my folks being better at this, or you're sitting there as just an individual contributor and you're saying, yeah, I kind of want to have more of this. We're going to spend some time on that. So to help us through that, by the way, if you're listening to the show, not watching the show, I'm so excited and happy about the topic of employee engagement. I'm wearing a happy shirt. I'm wearing my colorful flower shirt, which I think Whitney is a fan of, although we'll have to ask her on my next show. But I'm really excited about this idea of employee engagement. And so to help us on this journey, I've got a good friend of mine, an expert, Harold Lewis. Harold, how are you?
I'm good, Brandon. How are you?
I'm good. So your official title is manager of ScottMadden, which is a consulting firm.
Well, in mixed company, I have to use manager. It's really czar, but
czar. I like that.
We don't want to get into that.
Czar. I like that. That's a really good title.
I'm not sure.
I don't meet too many czars these days.
Well, it's a declining position.
It's a declining position.
It's not a growth area. That's where I was trying to go with it.
It tends to have rebellions and those kinds of things happen.
People just don't toe the line. I don't know why. Maybe it's the title.
Maybe they're not engaged.
There you go. See?
That's it. See, this is why I'm hosting the show today, folks. This is why.
This guy's good.
So before we get into this topic, because you and I were jamming a little bit before we started, it's story time, and I always love stories, and I think our listeners would love to hear a little bit more about you and your journey. So what walk us through a little bit of this journey and path. What got you here?
Yeah. And I'll jump around just a little bit, but I'm a native of Georgia. Grew up here in Atlanta. Went to high school, Towers High School. Go Titans. Titans. And went off to college, came back, worked for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution in the newspaper space. Sales was my first job. So I had a little bit of motivation right there, right? And then concentrated in economics in college. So again, thinking about what makes people gets people motivated. Went to grad school, went to work in management consulting in the first stint, then went to work for various companies, including the Weather Channel, Emory University. Interesting path there in terms of various roles and opportunities, and worked in strategy and corporate development with the Weather Channel, how to grow the business, how to get people to consume more weather, how to get people motivated to consume more weather. Again, a little bit about a motivation. Went to Emory, ran the evening MBA program, had the pleasure of meeting you and working with you there, and found my way back to management consulting when it became clear that my kid was going to college out of state, and we are going to have to pay that out of state tuition. So we needed a little thing called bonus, which we don't. We don't have that in the public sector too much ever, nowhere. Certainly not where I was. So took advantage of the management consulting experience. Decided to join a smaller firm this time, taking on a more significant role in terms of working with clients. And so been with ScottMadden for about 3 years now.
Awesome. Fantastic. So when we had lunch, this was, I don't know, was a little...
We did lunch, yes.
We did lunch. Yes. Your people talked to my people. We got that all set up. And we had lunch. I remember we talked a little about employee engagement as a possible topic. So when we... I think everyone has a different definition of employee engagement, what that means. So maybe that's a good starting place. So when you think about employee engagement and how you would define it, what comes to mind for you?
That's an excellent question. Employee engagement has been defined a number of ways. If you go to the Society of Human Resources Professionals, SHRM, they'll have their definition. Other folks have different definitions as well. The way I look at it is pretty simple. Ready, willing, and able, right? Usually you see that term when it comes to certain categories. I look at it as we're all ready and we're all able. Able means you have the tools to do your job. Ready means you actually show up. Whether you are willing to meet the requirements and exceed them, to me, is an indication of how engaged you are. So employee engagement is the employee who is ready, able, and most importantly, willing to meet the requirements of the position and exceed them. And the willingness is what we are talking about in terms of, well, how can I increase the willingness of Harold Lewis to exceed at his position?
I love that. That's I think, perhaps the best definition of employee engagement I've ever heard.
Wow. Boom. Already we are breaking new ground here.
Already winning, folks.
Yes.
Winning.
It's good. But I would just simply say, I would say that it's best to keep it simple. And that was what we were striving for. With
Yeah, I love that. I think it's so simple. It's just this idea of ready, willing, and able, right? So ready, they're showed up, able, they've got the tools, resources, etc. The real question is willing. What can we do to move the needle there?
Yes. And I was thinking, I settled on that back to, we were joking about aging earlier, where you get to a point where the body is
wasn't joking, folks.
Others who are not as experienced as us,
sensitive topic.
Others who have not lived as long as us and therefore know as much are envious. And so therefore they were joking about it. But often when you get to a certain point in your life, the spirit is willing, but the body isn't able. And so that's where I started thinking about willingness. But yes, so we have some ideas, inexpensive, which is what a lot of companies love to hear, about how to increase employee engagement.
Yeah. So inexpensive ways to increase employee engagement.
Yeah.
Okay, you had me inexpensive.
Hey, look at you.
So let's go. How about hit me? I know you've got a couple.
Got a couple.
Hit me with your first one.
Can I just say you don't look like a bean counter?
I don't look like a bean counter?
You don't.
No, that's true. That's true. That's right.
I would not have expected you to say, "Oh, you got me at inexpensive." Creative, maybe? Yeah, but not inexpensive.
Shirts like this are not cheap. They don't come a dime a dozen, despite what Whitney might think. These are actually very nice shirts, and I have to save up for these.
Wow, I think it's a great environment that you have that you two can commiserate in such a manner. I'm just going to say that, and it speaks to the engagement that Whitney has with this role.
It's true. I'll be looking for a highly engaged producer very shortly. So what would be a good first step for us?
I'm going to give you one because it usually is overlooked. Most people dread this. Most people don't want to do this, don't want to have it done to them. Like I'm giving a cliffhanger, like what is he about to talk about? And so, but this has been found to be one of the best ways to increase employee engagement if done well.
Okay.
And that is the annual performance review, the dreaded annual performance review.
Wah,
wah, wah. Is that the best you have, Harold? Really? That's where you want to start? You sure you want to start with that? Yes, I do. Listen with me. Hold on, because I just had mine actually recently, and I'll just share. You
feeling okay?
I'm good. I'm here. I'm not wearing the green shirt.
Most people don't. He is wearing a fantastic green shirt, folks. You're not seeing the show.
Yes,
he's in a good mood. So that would lead me to say that the performance review conversation was not as painful as I almost equate it in my mind with so there's an annual physical, which no one really loves doing. It's not a fun experience, you don't come away happy after that usually. And I would put an annual performance review as a couple notches below that.
Yes.
In terms of
almost like a dental visit.
How am I going to feel after that?
Yes.
But you're actually saying, no, this is an opportunity for us.
Yes.
Okay, so tell us more.
Yeah, a couple of tailwinds here. First of all, millennials who comprise the largest demographic now, and in our firm, they're actually 65-70% of the staffing. They love feedback. So this is a great way to get them motivated, okay? And then irrespective of demographics, if you do this right, the employee comes away saying, my gosh, Harold Lewis really knows me, cares about me, wants me to succeed at this company. And as you probably know, because you probably talked about it on other podcasts, people usually leave bosses. They don't usually leave jobs.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So if you're out there and you have direct reports or you are a direct report, this is a way to firm up the relationship up and down as well as potentially sideways, but we're talking about up and down here. So here's where we're coming from. First of all, don't just have a performance feedback session once a year. That's not good, okay? Because that's where, to your point, it's like a physical. It's like, oh gosh, it's coming up and I really don't like it because Harold's going to sit there and he's got to think back 10, 11, 12 months and who knows what kind of notes he's kept, and we haven't talked at all during that time, so this could all be a surprise.
Yeah.
I don't have any clue where this is going, and it's going to factor into my
my anxiety's already going up.
Yeah,
as you're talking. I'm just getting more anxious.
Exactly, right? So what you want to do is you want to do this regularly. We recommend monthly. We recommend informally twice a month, or excuse me, bi-monthly, bi-weekly, every 2 weeks. I wasn't a math major, I'm sorry. But every 2 weeks informally, once a month, have it done. And then we recommend 3 to 4 months a formal performance review. So someone gets 3 or 4 during the year. And we also recommend that you go into it saying, listen, I want you to be the best you that you can be here while you're with our company. This is an opportunity for me to give you information so that you can course correct if necessary or accentuate some of your strengths, and we can both do better. I'm your coach here. I'm giving you feedback from an objective source. It's not like, okay, Brandon, I'm going to tell you how bad you are because I don't want to give you a very good merit increase, and I really don't want to spend a lot of time, and I don't really care what you have to say, so we're just going to get through this, check these boxes, boom, 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 be done. No, if you look at it in terms of frequency, fact-based, and coaching, people immediately you'll see as if all the anxiety starts to flow. Now, this assumes there's a level of trust, okay? This assumes that we're not talking about someone who needs a performance development plan because they are not meeting the requirements of the role.
Right.
Okay, so we're not talking about someone who's not meeting the requirements, who you may need to liberate from your company. Let's put it that way.
Oh, I haven't heard that phrase before.
Yes. And again, we can talk about that. We can talk about that in another podcast. But yes, some people say terminate. Some people say other terms.
I've heard invite them to find another home.
Invite them to find another home sounds as if you're trying to be too witty and put them in condescending to them, be like, oh, you're not going to figure this out. I prefer to say, this isn't working out, so let's just liberate ourselves from this situation. Let's just do that.
So if I'm unhappy with Whitney on the show, I could say, we're going to liberate you from the next show?
You would say to her, we need to have a conversation about your liberation.
About liberation?
Yes. And she would be, well, good alliteration. No, that would be not right. Good rhyming.
My daughter, Abby, who comes on the show regularly.
I've seen her on the show.
You should watch your back. She likes to buy Free People. It's a brand. It's a kind of shirt, clothing line. It's called Free People. Got it. And I have to keep reminding her, stop freeing more people. Every time she comes home from the mall, I'm like, did you free people today? Don't free any more people.
Well, you're taking me back to my undergraduate days about economic study, where we learned there's no such thing as a free lunch. And that's where people say to you, I want to take you to lunch. And you're like, oh, great, I get a free meal. There's always an agenda. There's always an agenda. Yeah. And your daughter doesn't seem to know that free people is not literal. That there is payment, and it's coming from you.
It's true. It's coming from somebody.
Yes.
That's right.
Consequences. We talked about consequences, but we'll get back to this. So, because that's why you had me on. So we'll talk about the performance review. So if you have the performance review, Brandon, I'm telling you, that is the best way to get someone engaged, because they sit there and they're like, and this is what I want people to take away. How many times a year, a month, a day, does anyone ever say to you, it's all about you right now?
Well, see, this is something that I'm taking away from the way you're framing it. I'm really summing it all up into two big categories. One, and I'm putting them in different order than you shared on purpose.
Yeah.
One is orientation. Rather than make the performance review kind of a retrospective and I'm judging you and I'm going to tell you what your score is, I'm going to hold up your 10 or your 9 or your 5. Yeah. It's more about, no, I want to make this a really successful year for you.
Yes.
So let's talk about how we can do that. So it's more of a walking alongside, or maybe even giving them up front what you're shooting for, versus you guessed wrong, you get a 4. So orientation, and the second one was, I think that is both the easiest and the hardest to do, is frequency.
Yes,
it's because rather than doing it once a year, you prescribed once a month conversations where you have a formal sit down.
Yes.
Every other week, an informal conversation.
Yes.
And then once a quarter, a mini performance review.
Yes.
That kind of does let's stop. So you're talking about what would be that? That would be at least 2 to 3 a month.
Yeah.
And then plus 1 a quarter.
And let's talk about that, because the first time people hear that, they're like, oh my goodness, I don't have that kind of time, dude. Where are you coming from? And what we're talking about is, with the informal one, twice a month, you jot things down. And that's why it's informal. And then you hopefully are meeting with your direct reports at least once a week, maybe twice a month. And during one of those meetings, you're giving them some feedback, all right? And then once a month, I suggest you take them out to lunch and say, hey, I just want to reflect on the past month, and here are the things that I have seen or am seeing takeaways. And they don't always have to be constructive criticism. It could be things that you're doing well and we want to see more of this, right? In fact, some schools out there suggest that you focus on someone's strengths. Everybody's open to hearing about how great they are. So that may be an approach, but that's just something to be mindful of, right? And then in terms of your company and your company's performance review cycle, it may be that only once a year do you have to write something up in detail and file it with HR. It goes into the employee file. That becomes a non-event if you're talking to people this many times along the way.
Okay.
So hopefully, to summarize, you're watching someone's work, you're making mental notes, you're jotting them down on a piece of paper, could be a Post-it note, could be a little notebook that you have, and you carve out some space. Nothing out of the ordinary is what I'm saying. Just pick up something. In the old days, as you may remember, Brandon, we used to have on our desks these little calendars where we would flip the page over with each day. And so that used to be a good way to jot this down. So you jot those down, then once a month, that's what you use to have that conversation. Then you tally those up every 3 months, once a quarter, to write up something that you share with them, and then you discuss. Okay. And then you use that as inputs for the annual review.
So I'm going to take us into break. When we come back, I have a question about this.
Yes.
Because I think I'm thinking of a curveball, and I want to throw it to you.
Baseball's my sport,
and
man.
See if you can hit it.
I'm ready.
Okay. All right. So we're going to go into break, and we come right back.
Yes.
Continuing on this topic of employee engagement, how to do that better, and also things to avoid. So stay tuned. Hey everyone, this is Brandon. I hope your 2018 is everything you'd hoped it would be. That said, we could all use a tune-up. Go to my site, theworkplacetherapist.com, www.theworkplacetherapist, all one word, .com, for a library of resources for you. You can find past shows, blog posts on navigating workplace dysfunction, and even my TED Talk on the contagiousness of emotions in the workplace. And that's not all. There are the Workplace Happiness Workbooks to help you find happiness in your job, and even a tab to Ask the Therapist, where you can ask me anything on your mind. We all need a tune-up once in a while. Get yours today. Welcome back to the Brandon Smith Show. I'm your host, Brandon Smith, and before break, we were talking about employee engagement. Specifically, we were talking about the opportunity to use performance reviews to improve employee engagement. So when my guest, Harold Lewis, mentioned this idea, my initial reaction was not a good one, but he's moving me over to the side. And essentially, we talked about, if you change now the orientation of the review, make it about the person's growth and development, and increase the frequency, then that can help things. So here's the part that I'm thinking in my head. So now, this puts a little more of a responsibility on the manager to really pay attention to what's going on. So I could see one of two things happening. One, the manager is starting to get frustrated because they keep telling this person, I'm expecting you to improve on this thing. And they've had a lot of conversations now, and the person's not improving. Okay, so there's that scenario. The other scenario might be, okay, the person improved and they've gotten better, and all these conversations have been great. And now I end up with all members of my team, all 5 of them, are great. They've done everything I want them to do. And now it's time for rankings or whatever things that companies do to mess this all up.
Okay, so let's unpack what you just said.
Okay.
So you've given me feedback. I have not course corrected. And then second, you've given me feedback. I have course corrected, and we're all great. We're all above average, right? Okay, so first of all, I want to make sure people understand there's rigor here. It's rooted in the requirements for the position. So that's what you start with in terms of whether or not someone is performing well. Are they meeting the requirements? And then hopefully your company has other pieces to the scale that says exceeds or greatly exceeds, whatever that might be. Not meeting expectations, meeting expectations, exceeding, and then frequently exceeding, or something like that. Let's say there's 4. So if you have given me feedback and I am not taking advantage of it to improve, then what we suggest is then you go to the requirements of the position and what we need in order to best serve our customers, our clients, whoever that may be. But this position has requirements. The requirements are tied to this level of performance. In this aspect, you are not meeting that performance. We have had several conversations about you with respect to meeting this performance requirement, and we have both walked away with an understanding of what that is and where you're falling short, and you have assured me you're going to take action to meet the requirements. I'm not seeing that, and during one of the instances where you're writing up, whether hopefully, and I would not do this at the end of the 12 months, I would do this during the preceding 12 months, say to them, I'm giving you a formal write-up. It's been...
We go to a PIP.
Yes, this is June.
Performance Improvement Plan.
You're not
those of you that don't know that fantastic word.
Yes.
PIP.
This is a call center. Harold, we need you to answer the phone. I don't know what you're doing, but you're not answering the phone, right? So, and we have facts and records to support that, evidence, right? This is not my preference, okay? We're talking about requirements, not preferences. I might have a preference that you wear closed-toed shoes, but that's not a requirement for the role.
So you really focus on those requirements, and then you might have to move to a PIP. And then I'm hearing you're kind of going down the path. So then if the PIP doesn't work, then we liberate. They are freed.
We then have
for up and open to new opportunities.
Hey,
to
you know
explore.
what? You're a free agent. You just don't know it yet. You're about to become a free agent. What does that mean?
There are other homes that they have invitations to go.
We are a city in Atlanta of 5 million people and numerous companies. There's a role for you somewhere else.
So we may have to free those people.
Yes. Okay. So that's for the person that is not taking advantage of our performance feedback.
Okay, so
right?
how about, I think that makes perfect sense. I totally get it. How about the other dilemma?
Yes.
So you end up, it's almost working too good. You've got a team of all exceeds.
Yes.
But HR says, no. I'm sorry. If I let you have all exceeds, then I got to let her have all exceeds and him have all exceeds on his team. So that's not how we're going to do it.
Yes. 3 comments. Okay, we're not talking about grade inflation. We're not talking about everybody's above average, right? But number 2, if you truthfully have a well-performing team, and number 3, you look at the requirements for the position, and they are all exceeding those requirements by y'all's definition of what that means. Because for some companies, there's exceed, meaning occasionally somebody is above what the requirement said. And then there's another level above that where they are always exceeding, all right? We all have little spikes where we just, knock it out of the park. So there's a way to recognize that in the meets requirements. You can say you're meeting the requirements of the role. I've seen occasions where you have exceeded the requirements of the role. I'm documenting that so that you get credit for that, but you're not always exceeding the requirements for the role. So we need to be conscious of
So we should be conscious of that.
Yes. And that's where I think it's legitimate for anyone, in this case HR, to say to you, now come on now, Brandon, the members of your team, especially Whitney, are they always exceeding the requirements of the position? Because I know Whitney, I've seen Whitney, I could see that being the case for her. But Harold, he's got like a EKG machine. He's up sometimes, and then most of the times he's right back where he needs to be. And then sometimes he spikes. I don't know what happens. He wears a green shirt. He gets excited.
Whitney's always up there performing really high.
Yes.
Harold's kind of up and down.
Well, he's got a little bit of a rhythm to him because, he's just a real happening guy. No, but with respect to someone who's exceeding the requirements of the position consistently, that's a great situation to be in. That's where you have to have a conversation with them and say, listen, this is what I'm seeing. This is great. This is tremendous. I'm worried about your growth. I don't know if this position will enable you to grow.
Stay with that orientation. That's great.
Correct. And you say to them, now, this is where this position is. This is what we need from it. You're exceeding those requirements. I have limitations with respect to benefits and compensation and upward mobility. I can't make you the senior most director. There's director, and then you jump to vice president. So, but unless there's a vice president position that comes available, we can't make that move. So you have that type of conversation, and then hopefully you start talking about things you probably had on other podcast like a career lattice.
Yeah,
not a ladder.
so you start helping them kind of guide them. So I love that. So we started with employee engagement.
Yes.
We spent a bulk of our time on this idea of performance reviews.
Use the performance review.
And using that as a tool.
Yes.
I'm sensitive to our time,
Yes.
and I want to make sure we hit a couple more. So,
Yes.
so in the kind of the executive summary version, give us a couple more. What are maybe two more?
Yeah, and again, these are inexpensive ways to increase employee engagement. You have a president, a CEO, a CFO, a chief marketing officer. You go to them and say, listen, we want you to get more face time with the employees so they can better understand our strategies and what we want to do. We're going to take the high-performing employees, and as a reward, we're going to give them a set-aside time for them to have a one-to-one focus group type conversation with you. So however you want to structure it.
So our second one might be exposure.
We call it small group discussions.
Small group discussion.
Exposure to executives.
Wonderful.
Right? And Brandon's the CEO. Brandon agrees in February. He will have a meeting with 5 employees pre-selected, and he will sit and listen. They will ask him questions and get the information from him. Then he walks away knowing Bob Smith works in marketing. Mary Jones, oh wow, Mary Jones works at that call center, and she's like, nobody knows who I am. Nobody knows what I do. So that's another inexpensive way to increase employee engagement. Have these small group discussions with key executives. Okay, makes sense?
Great. I love that.
Yeah. The second one is, and this is a new year and a lot of people getting promoted. What we found is in many cases people get promoted and they're leading other people, but they've never had any training. So manager one-on-one training. It's like, not only did you do a great job and we promoted you, now we're going to help you to be successful in that role. And you might be scared to death, like, oh my gosh, I have 3 direct reports now. I used to be a member of that team, and now I'm in charge of that team. And that comes with all kinds of, dynamics, right? So we're going to help you with that. So that's another way, like, oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Is this normal? Yes, this is what we do for high-performing individuals. A third is when you, unprompted, do a survey in the marketplace and come back to a high-performing individual and say to them, you know what? We've done some research. Your position in the marketplace, 3 weeks vacation is now the standard. You only have 2. We're going to give you a third. Unprompted. You didn't ask for it. Boom, there you go. Why? Because you're a high performer. You're doing great.
Boom. There you go.
Right?
I love it. I think that's great. Right? I think that's fantastic. Now, let me recap what I heard.
Yes.
Make sure I got this right. So our first one is the small group discussions or exposure with senior leaders.
I love that one.
I think that's cool. I think that's unique. I think it's easy, and I think it goes a long way. The next one we mentioned was kind of manager 101 training, making sure new managers are getting trained. So that's not only going to make them better when they're giving performance reviews and everything else with the folks below them, but also shows we want to invest in you and help you grow.
Invest in you.
That's fantastic. And then the third one was an interesting one that seems really obvious, but I don't see a lot of companies doing. And it is almost reluctant to do it.
Yes.
Let's go to market. Let's do a little benchmarking. And if we're behind, let's go ahead and pull up to market standard. What I'm observing, and this is not good, by the way, is that most companies are like, you know what? We'll let our employees tell us when we're behind. And they'll tell us by walking. We start seeing a couple people walk because of other offers across the street. Then we'll just figure out what across the street's offering, and then we'll match that. And so I'm seeing more and more salary compression, where it costs more. People that stay are just getting small incremental increases. But if you leave the market, you're going to get bigger bumps. So you're actually paying more for people when they come off the market. And you're seeing that actually in a lot of research around millennials, where they're saying, if I leave every 2 years, I can increase my salary 20% every 2 years. Do that, over a course of 10 years. I made a big bump versus staying at this one company.
That's right.
And
what you're talking about is brilliant, by the way, because in some industries, let's acknowledge it, the way to move up is to move on. And there's a phrase, to move up, you got to move on. So some people in some industries believe that in order to move up, I have to go to another organization at a higher level. Then I can come back to this one or go to a third. So we're not talking about those industries. I've heard that said about higher ed management. I don't know if it's true, but we're not talking about those. Let's talk about what you're discussing, which is fast follower, I prefer to call it, or do you want to be proactive? So if your organization can be responsive when Harold gets another offer and Harold tells you that he has another offer and you say, this guy's one of our best performers, we don't want to lose him, we're going to make a counter offer. If your organization is able to do that quickly, a fast follower, then go for it. Do that. Most organizations are not. And so what we're suggesting is instead of just being a check the box HR organization, you know who your top performers are. You know how well they're doing. So pick out the ones that you think have the brightest future or that you most want to keep on board when you do succession planning. And once a year or every couple of years, do a research in the marketplace for their title in terms of other companies as best as you can. And, you can always get a consultant to help you do this. You can get a consultant to help you do anything, but you can get a consultant to help you do this. And I've seen this happen. I've had this happen to me where you go to somebody and you have that conversation, and believe me, they're standing there. First of all, they're in disbelief. Wait a second. This isn't Candy Camera. Somebody's going to jump out. You're giving me another week of vacation. I didn't complain. I didn't ask for it.
You're giving our age away when you say Candy.
Yeah, I did. Hidden.
Punked.
Punked. Thank you. I was struggling.
Still 10 years old.
Catfished. Well, that doesn't really apply either.
That doesn't quite apply either.
That's
what you get when you moved.
Yeah, I got closer. Decades. Well, I'm trying to appeal to everybody, Brandon. We're global with the podcast. But think about that. Someone comes into you and you go to Marcel or Isaac or no, because we've just been talking about Whitney. We got to give everybody some love here. You go to them and say, I've done some research and here's where you are and here's where you should be and you're a great performer. We want to keep you. And I don't want to suggest anything, but there are certain markets that are hoping to lure a certain company that is based in a certain city in the Pacific Northwest who says they need a second headquarters. You might want to get on this before they come into the market, because then you have helped, I wouldn't say bulletproof, but you've helped to steal yourself from getting stolen from. See what I did there?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I totally, amen. So we're at time. So I ask all my guests this question.
Oh, okay.
So get ready.
All right.
If you could give us one life hack to make our lives that much more free from dysfunction, whether personally or professionally, what would it be?
A life hack to help free yourself from workplace,
work or home. It can be something you just think is healthy for people to do at home, either with personal relationships or personal care, or it could be at workplace, healthy conversations, questions to ask. There's really no right or wrong answer.
Yeah. I would say two things. Always assume positive intent.
Nice.
And be kind. Be kind. Positive intent is something happened. What was going on? I can't believe they called this meeting at 8 a.m. They knew I had something planned. No, assume positive intent. Well, there must have been a reason why they needed this
Brandon
meeting
Smith bobblehead agrees.
Yes. And then being kind. All right. It costs you nothing to be kind. And you know what? You get all the benefit. Your blood pressure doesn't go up. You don't get stressed out. The other person is like, whoa, Errol's being kind. What's up? Is he a nice person? I guess maybe he is.
I'm going to take the assume positive intent thing. And so I've been picking on Whitney a little bit. And that's because she made fun of my shirt from an earlier week.
That's right.
And now I realize if I assume positive intent, it was because she really liked it and she was jealous and she wanted it for herself. So
I noticed you, Brandon.
I get it now.
She noticed you.
And so now I have a little more compassion.
I've talked to Whitney and she doesn't really notice many people.
She knows that.
No.
I know.
She's got that focus.
Thank you for that reframing.
She looks in your area and she sees snow on the roof and she's like, Brandon's here.
By the way, that's what Harold calls my hair, snow on the roof.
And that's because I have none. Thank you. For those of you watching.
Harold, thanks for entertaining me at least and joining the show, but really giving us some really different ways to think about employee engagement and a different definition.
Yes.
So I'm looking forward to the next time we get to jam. So between now and then, how can people learn more about you or connect with you? Is there any place they can go?
Yes. Well, thank you for asking. I have a Twitter handle, Happening404. Yeah, I know when you're looking at me, you're thinking that's exactly the Twitter handle I was thinking for you. I'm also on LinkedIn.
Happening with a G.
Happening. Sorry, I'm from the South. Sometimes we swallow syllables. Happening404 is a Twitter handle. But also, I work at ScottMadden Inc., Management Consultants. You can contact me through that means.
Y'all are doing good work.
I don't know if you want me to give out my Gmail address. We can give that out. That's fine too. Is that okay? Is that allowed?
They should DM you on Twitter.
Holy smokes, that would be something I would just like tell my son who's in college. Check it out, Dad's getting DM'd.
That's right.
He'll be like, what do you mean? What do you know about DM? I'll be like, dude, I'm woke. No, Dad, that's not the way that goes. See, you make a step and then you just fall, and then
Right.
they know.
Abby, my daughter has well informed me of all my missteps.
But seriously, I would welcome any feedback, commentary. If you want more information about employee engagement, we'd love to help you with that.
Fantastic. Awesome. Okay.
Focus on inexpensive ways.
Inexpensive.
Yes.
Inexpensive? Who can turn down inexpensive? So thanks for listening, and continue the fight every Sunday, 9:30 p.m. Eastern, where we drop a new show. And if you haven't checked out my website, please do. My wonderful web designer, Kristen, has updated it and simplified it, so it's that much easier for you to download old episodes of the show, check out the blogs, the e-workbooks, and other resources to help your life be that much better. And Harold's now messing with the Brandon Smith bobblehead, which is actually okay. And between now and then, and overall the next week, have a great week and an awesome life.